Clement Greenberg, the very famous art critic and writer, had been to Australia and given a power lecture, and he'd also come to Hobart, and he was giving a talk. I know he wasn't giving, he was, I don't know if he gave a talk in Hobart, but I was supposed to tour him around to Port Arthur and places with a friend driving, but I put a party on for him in my studio. And I invited all the most intellectual people I could find, but there were a lot of jazz people and poets, and I thought, oh, I'd put on all my serious music, you know, my John Cage and all this sort of modern avant-garde stuff, and he said, oh no, I like Fats Waller. Anyway, but he liked the studio, and but he was in New York, and he's world famous, he's dead now, of course. But so he said, when you come to New York, contact me. So I contacted him, he said, oh, come on Sunday for, you know, drinks. So I went there, and of course there's Kenneth Nolan, the very famous American painter, Jules Olitsky, another world famous American painter, I think Helen Frankenthaler, you know, the cream of, and Clem Meadmore, who recently died, the Australian sculptor who lives in New York. And then Clem would say, oh, next Tuesday, come to my studio next Tuesday. People come and say, oh, Ravi Shankar, oh, forget him. You know, and then I'd meet someone else, and they'd say, oh, come, you know, and, oh, I was going to hear Ray Charles. So, oh, it was wonderful. Finished my art course in '64. By then I was a proofreader. I'd been promoted, that's as high as you can go. And so I thought, okay, I'll leave home. I was living with my father and my stepmother. I'd actually died many years before, but I was living with my father and stepmother. Thought I'd leave and I'd get a studio, and I had a studio in the city, centre of the city. And I thought, oh, okay, I'll also chuck in my job. I've been saving money and already exhibited a bit over here in Melbourne, at the Australian Galleries in Melbourne. And so I thought I would take the plunge and become a full-time painter. And through different circumstances, I decided to stop painting watercolours. And I started painting in oil. I thought I'd teach myself how to paint in oils. And I started doing landscape oils on the place called the Domain in Hobart. There used to be an old zoo there, which is now a Navy oil depot, and there was a keeper, and he would allow me in through the gates, and it was just like an old zoo with concrete enclosures and chickens running around and everything, but you were secluded, and it was quite an interesting area, and I could paint there every day. Then I'd trudge back to the studio carrying these cameras and things. Then one day I got back and I saw a coat hanger lying on the floor in the studio in the hallway, and the windows nearby was casting a very unusual shadow. Probably been there for weeks, I'd probably just stepped over it, never noticed it. But this day I noticed, I thought, gee, that's, you know, a beautiful thing, a misshapen coat hanger with this unusual shadow cast on the floor. So I thought, well, I'm not going to, and then I started noticing things in my room, you know, the old clothesline, like a piece of cord from one wall to the other across a corner. You can hang your washing on it, and I started seeing shadows being cast. So I thought, I'm going to start painting interiors. Most, you know, I call them studioscapes. I'm not going to, why do I trudge, you know, for a mile up in the Domain to paint landscapes? You know, that's past, it's finished. Anyway, there's that, and then gradually I started doing frigaty work. I had some budgerigars and canaries, and they used to fly free around the place. I was painting them in the cages. Then I got this metaphor of, I was posing for myself in the mirror, and I started thinking of the cage as a bar, putting a person behind bars, as we put the birds behind bars, and those things. Then I started another stage. I was already exhibiting those here in Melbourne and Sydney, those paintings, and then I started to use my friends, young friends, as models. And my method there would be, I'd prepare canvases, usually about 6 foot high by maybe 5 foot or less, and say one person might come to, you know, to visit, to listen to music. So instead of sitting around just having coffee and wasting time, you know, getting to pose for me, I'd have to make up something on the spot, like stand here. It didn't have to take clothes off. It could be just, you know, whatever, you know. And he'd have a certain amount of time that he'd go, and then Wanderer might come in, or Yenda, or, you know, and then I'd add them to the other figure, like somehow. All these works were exhibited. I actually made my name with the coat hanger paintings, and then in the chairs with the shadows cast on walls and things like this. And then I got the Harkless basically because there's probably no one in the world was really doing nearly life-size figures with this multiple movement, like a head moving in 2 or 3 different positions, and you know, arms moving. So basically what I do, I'd have a model sitting or standing or whatever, or lying, and I'd say, you know, you're getting tired, would you like to move anything? They might move something. If I saw that it added something to the pose, sometimes it was ecstatic what they did to add to the, I'd say, can you hold that for, you know, and I'll try and put it in. I made it mainly linear, so I'd be using, I prepared the canvas with stained terps colours, rubbed it into, so there was nothing, there was no sort of like interior, it was just basically stains of colour, and they'd be dry, and then I'd draw the figure basically with probably black oil paint. Not always, sometimes I use chiaroscuro, you know, light and shade, but if you do that then it's hard to show the next movement. you know, the next multiple movement. So in a way, it's I was like a director, saying to the people, you know, you do with them, how could you hold that? Especially towards the end before I went to New York. Anyway, that's the work I got my Harkness for.